Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the next episode of the Cathode Ray Podcast. We've already recorded about 45 minutes. And when I say recorded, I mean not recorded. Because we had an error, and then we didn't hit, my fault. Didn't hit record. We already heard about day 1 and day 2 of the conference. We are going to go back and talk about the Retro World Conference. Maybe I'm going to leave the first intro in or something. I'm going to edit this somehow. I don't know how we're going to pull this shit together. We talked about
what
that we
do you
haven't
say?
had
It's okay. We've been apart for like a month, and we're coming back already rusty. So that's even funny that you could go through and do over 30 shows together and still come back and goof it up, right? So it's okay.
Always goof it up. So here we are. So we've been away for a while. I've been moving apartment. So this, as you can see, my scene looks different here. Some familiar things in the background. My shelf is still, my wheels are up there. So I've moved apartment. My girlfriend and I finally bought a place, so I have a slightly larger room, a little bit larger, not super large, but I own it. Well, the bank owns it. Nevertheless, I own it, apparently. So that's an important
Your name's on there
step.
somewhere.
Somewhere.
The important part, right?
Exactly.
Yes, you could do it with what you can.
So the bank gave us some permission to get this. It's quite close to the center. Before I was living like 30 minutes drive from the center. It was a bit of a hassle to get. Talent is a very, very small city. So 30 minutes, you're like, whatever, that's close to town. No, that's really far away. So I'm here. I've been working, and I've been moving because the place we're moving from, it's owned by the family, so there's no inspiration to get out. Like no final deadline, like you have to be out today or something like that. So we've been moving, and I've been working, and so we've only been living here for about 5 days now. I've been working a lot, hosting a lot of conferences, company summer parties, and it's been good. I get out into the Estonian countryside, and I yell at large groups of people for the day and get them to do things, and it's real nice. We're going to do this game and that event and this thing, and then there's a dinner and then there's drinks, and it's very nice to socialize. So here's a weird idea, living in the real world, which is also what you've been doing, because you've been there in the conference with everyone. Usually we're kind of glued to our computers, making content, looking at the algorithm, communicating with our friends. But you've been at the conference. I've been here working a lot. I'm happy. It's been a very warm month of August to work, so I'm happy to get some work. But the big thing, because I was working so much, I could not jump over the pond to America to attend the Retro World Expo, which is what you did, Steve. And this is what we're going to talk about this episode.
Yeah, that's I mean, he goes, it was actually a good time. Like if you had to move and like do this, it was kind of perfect timing for both of us, because I needed all the time I really could handle to get things ready. I had some final touches to put on some repairs I was getting set together, and then some monitors I was finishing up, some things I was getting done, try to get everything ready for that trip. Mm-hmm. And really, even if it would have been difficult for us to get together during that time period. So it kind of worked out well and advantageous for us. We just obviously got a little rusty.
Yeah.
Start here, and so that's okay. That's what happens. That's what happens. Everybody, even us pros, can make it look
that's right.
Messed
us
up
pros.
Sometimes. So
us pros. So we're here.
There's no, we're going to go through, I'm going to explain it or tell you we're going to talk about some cool stories from this trip. Mm-hmm. It was an incredible weekend, and really, we wanted to get, I think it's in the first couple minutes here, I wanted to give you a little teaser, because again, we're going to be talking about Expo, and specifically the Retro World Expo, and the teaser is this. We're going to talk about the worst thing at this Expo. I'm going to go in and tell you the truth about what the worst thing is. The worst that happens. Lewis doesn't know this yet. I'm kind of
I don't know. I'm not sure.
So
I assumed it was something to do with Bob, but it's not. It's just something.
Well, Bob probably would have seen it too. So no, thankfully, everybody kept themselves out of trouble. Predominantly, nothing serious happened. There are some funny, memorable moments that we're going to get into today that you wouldn't believe. I couldn't have made them up. They're so funny. So. Just a weird situation here and there from that weekend. But, it was the end of August. It's 2022, and we're going to the Retro World Expo in Hartford, Connecticut. for this expo, and the idea was that Bob had reached out to a lot of us that are some of your favorite retro creators, anybody that's in this space, kind of that we deal with, and ask that were they interested in coming to this specific event because Bob was going to have an extended table there. And there was an opportunity, for us all to get together, possibly, if anybody was interested. So thankfully, a lot of people jumped on board because we said a lot of us haven't had the opportunity to really do anything like this since the pandemic. I mean, personally, I've gone, and I made a video about me going to one other show since, I think, the pandemic. And that was...
Yeah, you made that.
Yeah, and I randomly did run into a friend of mine at that show, and we talked a lot, but... It was like the first thing we'd done, and then so this was the first one where a lot of us were going to plan on being together. What was with that?
Why? And I have no idea why. How come this conference was the one everyone was going to? There's other conferences happening around America.
Yeah, so I think it was about the time. I think it was about like the arrangement. It's definitely more convenient for Bob since he lived in Connecticut. Sure. So it's on the East Coast. It's really close to New York. It's one of the top, probably 5, I think, maybe retro conventions like that in the country. I definitely heard there were bigger ones in other places. But again, you're talking about something that might be in like Portland, Oregon, which is completely the other side of the country from here. And then maybe something somewhere else. I don't know, California. I'm not really sure. This was, again, the first one. I also think that Bob was able to plan it a little bit better, considering that he always knew he would be there and wouldn't have to like go and actually be out of town for this all to happen. So that was all good. There was the convention, it was available, and then just being able to coordinate it with that. Plus, it was, I think, a good weekend where a lot of people were going to plan on being there anyway, maybe. Right. Okay. This is kind of like where people would already, some of these other people were already going to be there with like a table next to it, like My Life in Gaming, Lawn TV, Scarlet Sprites. They all had specific tables for themselves. Even like the Gaming Historian was there in the same area as us.
Everyone's there.
Yeah. And Game Dave. And I'm trying to think about, there's a couple other guys, Pixel Dan, who's like, did like He-Man, a book, and like pictures, and so these are all YouTube people. And then Jeremy Parish was there across from us, and so a lot of people. I didn't know most. I mean, I knew Jeremy from before meeting him. We'd had lunch one time at an event once a few years ago. Before it was really funny. I didn't even know who he was. I just like asked him to lunch one time at a convention. We were both together, and then we just started talking, and he turned. This was years ago. So anyway, we all had this one area, and then like that was what I think was gonna bring it. Was like Bob kind of threw an invite out there, and a lot of people would come or they wouldn't be able to come. So hopefully, a lot of people would come, and a lot of people did. A lot of people would come to just come to that RetroRGB booth and hang out and talk and show off. Maybe some products, again, behind the scenes to things, to people to talk about kind of where things are on development of their items, like Citrus3000psi. Dan, I mean, he had a prototype that he was showing me of his Infinity Switch and like the final design of that and how it's all going to work together. And like,
so is that thing that Infinity Switch? So you can just keep adding stuff to it, right? Keep adding modules.
There's a point where you might have to do something else, like where after you add like a 10th one, I'm not sure, you might have to add a secondary like primary board or something because it just like won't go past like 10 inputs. 10 like connections. So that's what he said he's trying to figure out, and they redesigned it to be a little bit more cost effective, user friendly, and things like that. And it looks great. I mean, it looked awesome. And so there was, that there, but he would have been like, he was like me, came to this RetroRGB booth and hung out at the booth. Epis Vox was there. Beast was there. And then like a lot of guys from New York, a fight game community.
The New York
Jose Cruz was there. and a lot of guys that are just in the New York area were hanging out. Artemio was there with a couple of the other people from the 240p test suite, which was awesome to meet them. He had a couple panels. So, you know, again, it was a chance for a lot of people to kind of come together. And then since everybody had the convention center there at Hartford is set up where it has the convention center on one side, and then right next to it, attached to it, is this Marriott hotel, which is probably the nicest hotel in that area. And so there was you could go stay at the Marriott, which the majority of people did, and then just walk to the convention, right? You didn't have to do anything.
Sure.
So that's what the plan was, is then you randomly, I mean, if you came downstairs, you'd be hanging out with a lot of people that were staying at the hotel that would just be coming down to have a drink or have a conversation or do something else funny. And so that was like the whole plan, I think, and then the whole weekend. I know Bob was able to get some cool, hopefully, podcast things done, so we'll see you in the next couple weeks. So keep watching RetroRGB for that stuff. That would be really fun, because you'll get to see a lot of the people that were there that got to speak with him at the convention center. But that was like the nice high end side if you were staying at the Marriott. But you know what I mean?
But were you staying at the Marriott, Steve?
Right?
No, okay, no.
So that was like the clean cut, nice experience, right? You go to these. The convention was great. I'll have some kind of footage playback. I've got a bunch of footage I took, but it's random, and I don't really have a plan for it. I saw some funny things there. There was like a cool video wall with a couple of prison TVs set up there. That was pretty awesome. Okay. And then they had everything sectioned off, so there was like an arcade zone in the back that had all these arcade machines and pinballs. And then the other side would have consoles on a bunch of flat screens. And then there was a retro section where they were doing some kind of retro gaming competition. And so I got some footage of that. They probably had 20 Trinitron TVs out there just set up for that. Maybe not that many, but about that.
Sure.
One of the things that I caught on film was they were doing this Tetris tournament, right? And there was this guy with a cowbell, and he's just like ringing this cowbell, ding a ding a ding a ding a ding a ding a ding, and it's like right behind this dude's head. I'm like, what is he doing? And this dude is just sitting there looking at this Trinitron, and I'm looking at his screen, and it's like maxed out on the points, right? And so they're having a ding every time somebody's watching his counter and like keeping his score. And he's got the controller literally upside down, like if this is the controller, and it's set on his knee. And he's got a Michael Jackson glove on, and he's just doing this.
He's got a Tetris glove. He's got a special glove.
Yeah, and he's just doing this. And I like filmed him for 2 minutes just doing that. And it was just like,
those Tetris guys are nuts. They're bananas.
I was like, what in the heck is this guy doing? So there was a lot of interesting things I'd never seen. Like that had happened. There was another section of the, now this was another cool thing I caught. One snippet of, I hadn't been to a show where they actually did like a live auction. So you could go register an item in the morning. And they'd cap it at 100, and then in the afternoon each day they did an auction for that item.
That's
whatever.
Cool.
It could have been a lot.
Okay.
Sometimes they were like lots of Atari stuff, like Saturn games. I got one of those auctions going, so I got some footage of an entire auction going off of a Saturn game. And
how would you what you observed of? So I could come along. I've got some games. I've got some hardware or something, and I could put it up. From your observation of the auctions, how were the prices going for? Below market, average market, inflated? What do you think?
At the auction, they appeared to be going below, and I think that was one of the issues, and that's what we're going to get into here. You're getting close to the worst part of this whole experience, and I think that it'll be quite agreeable here. But anyway, the auctions. They would go off and be really quick, hey, game, and then like just walking around, and then somebody be doing a real auction thing. It was cool to watch a little bit of. Then they'd have a whole area that was playing different card games. Like, I imagine Magic the Gathering. I couldn't imagine anything else would have that many people at it. But it may be. I don't know. Anyway, and then it was just vendor booths. And then, like, over in this one section, it was kind of all of us creators, I think. Like I told you the names of. And I'm sure there's some people that I'm not thinking of. And then so there's that area, and then like around us, Bob had his friends. So we had Brooklyn Video Games, which is a really cool video game store in Brooklyn, and arcade they have there.
I've been there. It's cool.
And then they've got you go down to the other side right behind us, and like right behind our booth was Ryan from Castlemania. So like it was just a curtain between us. So often I'd just pull the curtain and like go sneak up behind Ryan, and like I was doing that all day. And then like beside him was Greg from Laser Bear, and so they were the four of them, and we were all using Greg's power. We were like talking with Greg, like negotiating watts, like how many watts we were each allowed to use, so that he could maintain his booth. Because they were like, make us pay $100 for access to electricity for the booths.
Really?
And I was like, oh, well, this is going to screw everything up. So we were like, I was so funny. I was like,
so if you wanted power at your booth, it was an extra $100.
The convention center was charging the actual vendors an extra $100 to hook up electricity.
Oh,
so
is that like? Do you have electricity problems?
I never had that. I had never had that happen before. I had never been to a
because electricity where I live in Estonia in Europe, electricity is a big thing right now. Like due to the war with Russia, shit's getting real, and we have problems. And I don't know, they've got some like multi-country network or something. So we actually have a webpage that I can go to, and I can see the electricity price hour by hour, and it gives you the price like 24 hours ahead. So my girlfriend and I, we're setting the dishwasher to run at midnight. We're running clothes at midnight now. Like this new apartment we moved in has a sauna. No chance we're running it in the middle of the day. It's going to be very expensive. So it's going to be midnight saunas for us. So that's like something, and I've never done this before. This is something very new to me to look at your electricity usage. And I understand, like, as many of us in the retro gaming community do, I have half a power station here, of devices and CRTs and all sorts of things that are going to suck power up. And I bought an adapter that, like something from AliExpress that'll sit between the plug and the wall and tells you the usage. So I'm going to progressively go around the whole house, and lo and behold, I think my room is going to be the guilty one of where our power is going. So power is like on our minds here a lot. So I was wondering if that was causing that problem, if you have that issue with power in America.
It's got to be. It's part of that because the costs have gone up. No matter what, like I've got surcharges on my bill where I get just an extra percentage that's gone up every month, and it's up to 60%. So I have a certain amount of usage that I get billed for, and then they charge me a fee of 60% of that right now. On top of that, it's called a fuel surcharge, and that's like been doing that. That's the most it's been since I've gotten it was 60%. It was like, so yeah, I mean, that's the way we get dealt with it most of the time is they just bill us. They won't like tell you to do what you're doing, but that is smart to go around and check your usage and what's going on.
There's some usage graph.
Yeah.
Also,
so,
what
that's what they did. They charged. That could have something to do with that.
Maybe, but still for like a power, like okay, so. Anyway, so you were all like trying to make a deal with Greg.
Yeah,
like,
so it was funny.
let me plug in this power board.
That's why. And then one of the reasons I was fine to go spend some money in his booth and in Ryan's booth. Ryan had some games there which I was able to pick up. These are not in like the full decked out like collector's edition stuff, but I got this Gaiares, which is like a retro bit re-release. It's awesome. And then the Wily Wars Mega Man. So I got both of these from him. They're like $60 each.
What console are they for? Are they Mega
Sega?
Drive?
Yeah,
Sega.
Mega Drive.
Mega Drive.
Check it out.
Nice,
they look
nice,
awesome.
Nice.
So like, here's the one. Look at that beautiful.
Oh,
cartridge.
that plastic looks dope.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
That looks.
It's got
really
a nice
cool.
like beveled edge in there, and I mean, it's
you got to have the beveled edge
stuff. Oh yeah.
Oh my God,
So
Voltar's going to fire up if you don't have the beveled edge.
Those are beautiful. So they're good. I've been playing those. This is a shmup that this is a funny example. So he had a stack of these and these again. He produces these or helps sell them and something like that. So these were extras he brought with him from Washington. Ryan, that's what I'm saying. Castlemania Games, and he brought some mod kits. Again, Greg had a bunch of mod kits, but nothing I needed. So I bought these games. Well, this game sold out like pretty quickly, and the reason I figured it out when I came home. Why? Because my my son's been obsessed with looking up the eBay price on anything that might be a collectible for all of the reasons right now, I guess. So he's like, oh, this game right here, Dad, this game right here is selling for $95, $95. And I'm like, oh, well, cool. But that's what it was. See, he had them priced at just his normal price. They're like $60. So I went on eBay last night and I looked, and it was like 20 new listings from suckers who went to this show, bought this game, and think they're going to go flip it online and make like $20 after fees. I was just laughing, thinking this would be a perfect example for that guy.
Right. Guess what? Supply and demand.
There you go.
That's right. The
so now,
supply
like,
just got released onto the market. Yeah, market's flooded. So
at the moment. So, but yeah, I got those. I was super happy. I like both those games. I've been able to play them. It's been a while. I've actually been playing a lot of them with my kids and stuff, so try to get them to think about it. I also got this really cool gift from Artemio, which is the new edition of this is actually a special,
so dope,
unique edition for me, with a special thank you screen. It's so sweet of him to give me this nice, awesome gift right here. It's the new edition for that
Were any of those
console
being offered for sale by anyone? Like a regular edition?
This was just stuff he had brought. He knew that I liked the Super Nintendo version the most, so he gave me a choice between this and the Super Famicom. Super Famicom style.
It's
this
the one
one's
I
my
use,
favorite because this is the one. Well, and this is the one that I had. Like this was the cartridge in my country. That was how they looked.
Sure, that's the American style.
Like, to me, that was a kind. I wanted it. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff I picked up. I didn't really pick up anything else because the worst part, here it is, 20 minutes.
Okay, let's
do
it. Let's do it. Here we are.
Here's your tease. And look, you're going to get this part, and you have to stay along for the stories because we're going to get into story time after this, and it's going to be much better, everybody. So the worst part was, ding, 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 these vendor sellers. I mean, what a surprise, right? So
vendor sellers.
Not every one of them, because I can't paint like a large brush and give it to everybody. There were a couple that were good, normal vendors that were out working and bargaining with people. I could tell. I talked to Shank a lot. He was running around trying to make bargains all the time. It was great to watch him. So he anyway, the problem is that for some reason a large portion of vendors, they did have a lot of rare items, or a wide variety of items you wouldn't normally see, but they were all priced at 20%. The average was 20% over the buy it now eBay price. A lot of these things.
So you're saying a vendor to you is not like not like Castlemania or not like Laser Bear, who are kind of selling their own products, but a reseller of retro games or hardware or something like this.
Yes, because again, you were talking to the other guys I just mentioned were selling their own products or mod kits. It's new stuff. And like I said, not everybody was like this. Like, I bought stuff from Brooklyn Video Games. He didn't change his prices or anything. It's normal prices. And I'll give you a great example coming up right in a second for pricing things. So, because I went to the booths, and that was the key that a lot of us were talking about, that were just there like me, that were in there. So I'm talking about Displaced Gamers, Chris from Displaced Gamers. I talked to him a lot, and he was there a lot. And then Justin from Console Kits, he was walking around the whole time. And if anybody knows Mason, he's the guy who does all the thumbnails for Bob and those Retro Ralph. He was walking around, and Tito, and the consensus was really everybody was just, oh man, I can't believe the prices and this stuff. And then sometimes you would ask them to make a little bit of a deal, and they wouldn't even take a decent offer on items. And so and when it was Sunday, I was standing there with, I can't remember who, we were having the same discussion. It might have been Clint Cronin, if anybody follows Clint. He's another guy in the scene, and we were talking about what people were buying, and there was nobody. You could see all the vendors still had a lot of stuff on their tables, and I saw a bunch of people walking around, but I didn't see a lot of them buying stuff, right? Sure. And the ones that were buying stuff were coming and buying $30 books from Jeremy Parish, about, and those are cool stuff, right? Like their creators' books or something, like, again, or
original,
like original stuff they're buying.
Yeah.
And most of this stuff that's just like retro stuff, I think all these people thought like this boom season of booming that was there last year while the pandemic was going on and everybody had all this money. They don't realize that that's over. And it really, I don't know. I mean, I was really surprised because I thought for sure, I've done those kind of reselling before, and I thought for sure on day 2 there would have been more people that would have had like making deals, come make offers.
I don't want to take it home.
King.
I want to sell
Cash
it.
is king. And there was nothing like that. And there was really nothing like that. There was a lot of merchandise I'd noticed that I was like, oh, wow, it's cool. I see a JVC XI. Oh, wow, it doesn't look that in good a condition. It's the console only, listed for $350 at this booth. You can go get that all day for that price on eBay. Like, and just be patient. I was like, why would anybody splurge on an item, you know, at 20% over the market price? And so I know that that was the case a lot of times. There were some good deals to be made. I mean, there's plenty of people that bought items. There's still that. I was going to. It's not fair for me to say that everybody's like that, because I guarantee you 1/4 to 1/3 of the vendors would have been, like I said, a lot of those people that have been there like 5 times, a bunch of times, know what it's like. They don't want to go home with a bunch of stuff usually, and if and they're trying to make as much money as they can over the weekend. A lot of the people that I talked to that were specifically selling stuff, I asked them how they did, and it was it's a pretty even thing. Everybody said they were about breaking even, maybe a little bit positive, but it's a lot of work to break even. You know, some of those people had to put the hotel rooms, and you're making a lot of money come in. You have to make a lot of money to actually profit good from some of these events. So that was the one thing I was just shocked by. I felt like a lot of stuff wasn't moving, and
that's interesting. The supply and demand of it. Those vendors, and it's interesting that those vendors didn't want to adapt their attitude. So I guess that's how things go as the markets change progressively over time. They're still in that mode of like, I mean, who knows? Maybe they bought a bunch of stuff and they've got it in their brains. It's worth this. It's going to be this, and that's not where things are going, or they think this is the hive of where all the collectors are going to be. But it turns out, if you're going to that expo, you might actually be kind of savvy to begin with. That's the reason you're coming to that place. So I don't know. That's interesting. It's not a bunch of like just laymen or how to say civilians or something like that. It could be. It's so interesting they didn't want to give in.
Well, and when I always did my pricing and everything, it always had to be less than eBay, because you're paying 10% to 15% to eBay fees if you sell it on eBay. So I never understood. My thing was always like, well, if they're going to look at the price, they look online, they're going to see that it's less than. So they can't, really complain about the price. And I never really had this problem. I was always making deals, though, at the end of the days, at things, people buying bundles. But it is what it is. I think a lot of people may be new to this game and think there's something.
Oh, you think that's it? Because it's like, I mean, if you know your thing, if you're a guy or a person who is in the trade, you're buying stuff, you've been in it for a while, you don't want to go home empty-handed. You know exactly what you say. Cash is king. I don't want to hold this shit home. I got to sell it. But so many people just sticking to their guns and saying, no, this is it. Like, okay, bro, I guess you get to haul it all home and don't take any cash home today. Cool. Yeah,
that's kind of the way I feel like this show went for a lot of those guys. Because actually, a funny moment, I was since I was wheeling and dealing at the booth, I was wheeling and dealing at Bob's booth. I had a couple PVMs. And I brought them. I had restored them. One of them was a promo video I made about it. So I brought 3 total. They were the 4 series 13-inch PVMs, a 41, a 43 MD, and a 44Q.
Okay. And they're all 14 inches, are they? Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So, and they're all the same basic monitor family, so there really wasn't a lot of difference between them, except for they were 3 different models of the same line. So very similar. But since I was doing that, I needed to go in and out of this expo a lot. To move things. So I went with Bob, and he, was checking in, and he's like, come with me, just come with me. And I was like, great. So I just like was hanging out with him. I was like, what's up, guys? Yeah, what's up? What's up? Here, this is I need my badge, and this is Retro Tech. He needs his badge. And so they just gave me like the all access behind stage, do whatever you can, like nobody mess with you badge. Because I was literally going down to the parking garage, bringing CRTs up and down through the middle of this show, and I didn't need to be waiting through this line. So they were like, let me go into exits. So I was like, yeah, I love that, right? So it was the end of the show, Sunday, 5:15 p.m., and I've been taught a lot of people were taking off. Like, you know, that's the thing. You get to the show, and there's like one day where everybody's there together, and then like that evening, people start flying away.
Yeah,
like going home.
Off, yeah.
Like somebody like Epus Fox Saturday night was like, all right, man, I'm out of here. And I was like, oh my gosh, damn. I was like, I feel like I didn't even get to like hang out with you very much because I always wanted to talk to him. And he's somebody I've known from before. So I did get to talk to him some, but at the same time, you're like sad because you didn't get to see enough time. And that's kind of the way it started going. Right. So the second day, Displaced Gamers and then Justin from Console Kits and Mason, the four of us kind of like talked. We were all going to be there till Monday. And so we're like, let's go out to dinner after the show and, you know, just get a good dinner. And so like, yeah, let's do that. So the show's ended. I've taken the rest of my gear to go pack up in the minivan. And Chris is just walking around the Displaced Gamers with a regular badge. And I go back in the show. It's like 5:15. I'm wandering around, and Chris sends me a text saying, "Hey man, they kicked me out of there since I didn't have that fancy pass you had." And I was like, "Oh okay." And well, so I turn around. I'm like, "I'm in here. I'm all the way at the back. I'll turn around and walk out and meet you." And I'm walking through there, dude. And the vendors, right? This is right after the show shuts down. They're in there cussing, packing, pissed off packing, you know, like, oh, mother, this shit, what I do all this shit, and I lose money. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, see, I was right. You guys didn't, you know, you got greedy, and then you wouldn't even come off your prices. And some of them guys, so they learned the lesson the hard way, which is a good thing to learn. So
true, you got to know when to make a deal.
And I'm glad everybody didn't go and just like waste money, like spending extra because it's to spend to help support this stuff, kind of. Because there's more there needs to be enough margins in this where these guys, if they can't, you know, they need to be selling this stuff below eBay prices because that's
sure. Why would you? Why? I mean, I guess you could take
it
away
eBay
today.
guarantee, and it's like I don't have to make it. It takes away all the decisions you make like on the fly, right?
Okay.
You're not going to make like a bad decision. Whereas like with my PVMs, right? I sold those, and it was because people were like, look, I don't think I'm ever going to see one of these again. This is the first time I've ever seen one in person. There was a half a dozen people told me that. And oh, man, this is so great. So I kept getting this number, right? So somebody would be like, oh, Steve, come here, Steve. You know, Bob and like Jose Cruz were sitting there, and they're like, we're going to.
Oh, and Steve's dropped out again. I don't know if you can see this great freeze frame that Steve has done, but I'm going to stop the recording here. We're going to try and get Steve back. We've had a lot of issues today. Is it me? Is it the new place? What's going on?
A few minutes later.
So you were talking about that you and Chris, you were hanging out and you were going to get some dinner on the final day.
Yeah, and then we saw all the vendors get upset, you know, because they didn't make any.
Oh, that's right.
Some of them didn't make any money, so that's what, you know, happened is when they didn't make the money, so they were upset. And and then like the four of us went to dinner. We had a good dinner at this fancy restaurant across the street. It was, nice. I mean, it was a nice getaway because we had been at the hotel like most of the time, so we're like, let's go somewhere else, and just to get away for a little bit, but. You know, that was kind of like the fun, everything overview of the show part of the weekend. Some of the crazy, like, behind-the-scenes stuff that you won't find anywhere else is, like, so a good story would be Shank had a couple buddies that were, like, professional, or they were on the Melee scene.
Okay.
Like the Smash Brothers Melee scene. So they're really into this. And they're all like in their 20s. And they're telling, Shank introduces them to me at the hotel. And he's like, oh, you got to meet these guys. You got to meet these guys. And I'm like, all right, man. Yeah, come on. Let them come over here. I'd love to talk to them. And they're younger, you know, in their 20s. And they're really cool. One guy, he makes mods for the game. And that's his thing is he does all these different modifications of the game. And then the other guy fixes controllers at the tournament, and they're like, "Oh man, you're from so and so Virginia." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "We were just down there. There was a huge Smash tournament like 2 weeks or last week." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh man, you should really get into this." And Shake's like, "Listen to these guys. Listen to these guys." And it is, they're like, "These guys are crazy about tubes." And I'm like, "Tubes? Yeah, of course, right? CRTs." He's like, "Oh no, man, they're crazy about tubes." And he's like, "The whole show is a tournament, and everything's on tubes." And it's these halls and it's these tubes, but it is like, but the last one, the tubes are just like dog trash, right?
Yeah, okay,
Like,
whatever consumer shit they get.
I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, sometimes you go and it'll be like, it's a random draw, so you get stuck in a TV, and it's like purple only on the left side of the screen. And then like sometimes like it's the convergence is off and it gives you a headache to play on it. And then he's like, the last one, though, we had a CRT catch on fire in the middle of the tournament, and it was awesome. And so he pulls up this video on his phone, and his TRT just starts shorting out, and this big puff of smoke comes out in the middle of this Smash Melee tournament. And I'm like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Is this video. And they're like, "Oh yeah, man, it's the Smash scene, man, you got to get into it." And I'm like, "Hey, you know, it actually sounds kind of cool."
Sounds cool. I mean, you would be walking around there. You just sort of casually walk in, and they'd be like, "That's the guy. That's the guy." And people start whispering.
I was
"He's
walking
the
around,
CRT
and
guy."
there were these other guys. He's like, Shank's like, these other Melee guys would all show up, and I'm telling you, they're all like in the same age bracket, like under 30, of
guys.
course, 20 to 30, and this other guy shows up, and he's like, "Come over here and meet this other guy from Smash." This is Shank at another time, and the reason he says, "Come over here and meet," I'm like, I'm running around in the hotel lobby, like between the bar and this other seating area, saying hey to people, right, talking, conversations, bouncing between everybody I can to try to do some networking and just say hello and see everybody and talk to people. And Shank would just be coming up, "Hey, come check this out." They had taken a JVC, the 15-inch JVC Pro CRT, and they had it set up in the hotel lobby, like right when you walk in past the checkout desk. They had it set up with Smash Melee on it, just sitting there playing. So these Smash guys were playing, and I'd be like, "Oh, come over here and meet this other guy. Come over here and meet this other guy." And then it started, you know, I'm sitting there having a couple beers and hanging out with Dan again, Citrus3000psi. We're hanging out. He's drinking another couple drinks. We're just sitting there. It's getting late. And Shank, for like 2 hours, keeps coming up to us, jumping in between us. "Hey, I mean, this has got to be the greatest thing in the world. When are you two going to face each other at Melee? Come on, it's right over here, 10 feet away." And we kept giving him, "All right, young man, one more drink for the old timers." And then it was literally like 2 hours later, and I was like, "Oh shit, we forgot to go play for Shank. Let's go do this." And then he's like, "Yeah, okay, let's go do this." So, we're getting ready, and we go, and I'm sitting there, and it's like, "All right, here's the deal. The two guys I was telling you about that did the mods and the controllers, they're like, we're gonna coach Dan." So they're sitting there like coaching him, right? Like he's sitting over this side, I'm sitting on this side, and Shank's like, "I'm gonna be your coach." And I'm like, "Okay, Shank, whatever. I don't know what to do." And he's like, "Just trust me." He's like, "Pick Peach." And I'm like, "Peach? Really? Peach?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I don't think I've ever picked Peach in this game." And he's like, "Oh yeah, Peach." And I'm like, "You're trolling me or messing with me or something." And then I picked Peach, and then the two guys are going over there with Dan. They're going, "Oh, he picked Peach. We got to pick this guy. We got to pick this guy. So one guy can be Peach."
Like it matters. Like it's going to be a
like
big
this
thing
whole
between
strategy,
you two.
right?
Yeah.
So we get into this match, and they've got it decked out with like, I don't know, like 7 of us, or however many. We have to fight each other down, like we each have 7 men. So it's like 8-minute matches, right, between me and him. And at the beginning, we're just like, he's like, they're just like, "Just use the stick, only the stick." And then I'm like, "Shank, how do I block?" And this is the funny, "You're not allowed to block. You don't press block. You're not allowed to block. You just press that stick. That's it." And he's like, the whole time, he's like, "Get up there. Don't run. Just walk slow, and then do the stick." And so we're doing that. Dan's got his groupies over there telling him what to do with his character, Marth. And he's, we're having this back and forth, like, stupid battle. Like, and then I finally figured out how to float back in the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Dan was getting pissed. he was getting super pissed because I could pull out an umbrella and float back into the screen. And I was like, I would do that forever and then just do that cheap move and then beat him. And so, like, I beat him the first round, and it came down to, like, the last person. And then he beat me the second round, and it came down to the last person. And then, like, the third round we did it, and I just whooped his ass on it the third round. And so it was great, but I was laughing. I was like, these kids were into it. It was like a 30-minute match between me and Dan in the lobby at midnight on this show on a CRT for these Melee.
That's great. It sounds
fanatics.
like those Melee guys just like walk around with consumer tubes, just like ready to go with it. I saw that picture of Shank in the lobby, and I was like, right,
that was it.
He's just set up on a table and like, boom, here we go. We're ready to play.
So that's the JVC monitor that only has S-video and composite normally, and so they didn't have the card that. It wasn't made by Martin, but it's similar to Martin's cards.
Okay.
You know, where he has the reproduction card so you could add RGB or component.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
There was one for this JVC monitor, and that was another thing. So I had gone from being at the show the whole day. It's Saturday, you know, with all the people talking and everything, and then I went to my hotel, my Airbnb, which I don't even know that we got into that. The Airbnb, and then I got cleaned up, and then I came back to the lobby, and I had to walk around, and I was sweating like a dog, and then Bob, Shank, and Epis Vox were like, hey. And I was like, oh, man, what the heck do you guys have on your mind, right? They're all looking at me like, hey, we've been waiting on you.
They're up to something.
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone, and they're like sending me Twitter messages. I haven't even checked my phone. I'm like, they probably think I'm dodging them or something. So I'm like, what do you guys have on your mind? And Shank's like, so Bob tells me he gave you one of those cards for this JVC so we could get RGB on it. Well, and Bob's like, yeah, can we go get that card so that I can give them it? And I was like, it's in the van? And he's like, yeah, it's in the van. And one of those monitors I got, you know, we swapped out. I'm like, sure. So they're all like, oh, we want to go, you know, look at the van, right? So it's everybody walks out to the other end of the convention center parking lot, and we're all going to this minivan. And I push, it's got all the automatic doors. I open every door, and they're all like, oh, you know, CRT van full of BVMs, PVMs. And so, I mean, I'm like, damn, I wasn't planning on you guys getting in here or like looking for something. Where is this monitor? And of course, it's like in the middle under stuff. And we pull it out, and the card that's in it has been screwed in with a Phillips head screwdriver. And so I'm like, we don't have a screwdriver. We're sitting in a parking lot. We cannot be stopped by the screwdriver. And so all of a sudden, Epis Vox says, I got something. And he pulls out his debit card. He pulled out his debit Visa card. And I was like, yeah, right, man. Shut up. We're just going to have to go. I'm like, let's get out of here. I'm already like worn out. I'm like, I'm sweating like a pig. I just walked back and forth in the hot parking lot. I wanted to get AC. And they were all just laughing. And all of a sudden, within a minute, he's like, I got it. And he had unscrewed the Phillips head screws with this debit card. So I was just sitting with Bob, and I said, you know, one day I hope like 20 years from now we can all sit back and laugh about the time Epis Vox used his credit card to pull a JVC card out of a monitor to give to Shank. And it's like a minivan I rented to take CRTs to Bob. I was like, if we're all doing this 20 years from now, it's going to be the funniest just story for us to sit back and laugh
I mean, a bunch of stuff there. First of all, I would be worried that it's going to break my card. That's the thing. Is it like the
right?
card
I know
isn't going to be strong enough, but it was
your card.
But it was strong enough. Next, so these boys have got the JVC monitor. It accepts the card. But wait. If you've got the NTSC-U console, that only outputs. Well, S-video natively, and then what? I guess they've got the component cables because they're the Melee boys.
They were using a modded Wii.
Oh, okay. All right,
so that was their thing.
So they were getting what they could get. They could get component out pretty easily.
They could get whatever. Yeah, they wanted. They were using component. Yep.
Oh, okay. Because
so
I think
that was what
was
they
it.
did.
Was it? I guess you don't know. Was it hard modded or soft modded?
It might have been a bit of both.
Because I know, I think
sure.
the Wii, and our viewers can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Wii, like physically, hardware-wise, like the Japanese and NTSC ones can only do component, and it's the European ones that do RGB natively. And no doubt, look, you could install a mod or something like that. But I think even with a soft mod, you can't even get RGB out of a NTSC Wii. But I'm not entirely sure of that. But okay, component. Oh boy, boys love your component. So it was probably okay. So they. But then again, I'd be like, come on, boys. You absolutely had to play in component and you couldn't play in S-Video?
And one of the monitors I was sent with back was a BVM D24. And Shank's like, come on, let's get that D24 out. And I'm like, you're freaking dreaming. I'm not dealing with all that. I'm like, I'm not pulling that out. It was in a flight case, and you can't really fit a flight case in the van. So you have to pull the monitor out, put it down, then put the top of the flight case over the PVM, and then just like set the wheels upside down. So the wheels are up, on top of
so
it.
there's something.
Because you can't really fit all that in there, and if you do, you don't want it wheeling back and forth to protect it. So that's not a good...
okay, so that was the BVM, the D24. You were taking that back for you to service for someone had left that for you?
So I had taken a van, right, and I had rented it with the intentions of taking Bob 5 CRTs to his place, and then he had a buttload of BVMs and PVMs. Some of the stuff was stuff I was trading with him for some CRTs that I was bringing, a lot of 13-inch ones that I just told him I'd take. Consumer sets, and then a couple of PVMs and BVMs to fix for people, restore, and work on. And then I had 2 people that were from Patreon that came to the show, and they both they were local to the area. They brought a 13-inch PVM that they had, organized ahead of time to add to the load. So I was really full.
That's very convenient if you were in town for them to drop it off.
Yeah, so I was able to get 2 people that had organized that, and then they'll have to get them shipped back to them. But
that's the other side, isn't it?
I was able to fill the van with everything possible, and I said I did get to sell 2 PVMs of the 3 I brought at the show to 2 people that were very happy to get them, so that was very cool.
Is that Steve? Is that Steve because you were charging 20% above eBay price? So you were sitting around going, "Oh, why did I sell the third one?"
I know. No, I wound up selling 2 restored monitors, one for $750 and one for $800. That's the truth. There's no
straight up
ifs, ands, or buts. That's just what it was. One was the 750 was the 1353 or 43 MD. And then the other one was a 44Q, 1344Q. Sure. So those were the models, if anybody wants to look up the specs on them. Fully restored.
That's right. And I think those prices are, and I like the way you do it for what you've done to them. Like those monitors are, first of all, excellent monitors, and they've been restored by you. The credibility that you have, that people know who you are, that you probably the documentation. I mean, you showed me a lot of this documentation that you do. The amount of pictures it might be like, whoa, $800, but then you provide so much documentation, pictures. So many pictures of the work that's been done. They can clearly see what's up. They get a full explanation. There's no bullshit. It's like, look, this is the monitor. This is what I did, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's absolutely a segment of people out there who are like, I just want that peace of mind. That
there is. And that's what a lot of people do. And that's like what I'm doing for a lot of them. And it's good for them. It's good for me. It works both ways. I mean... They appreciate my work, and they understand, because again, you're going to go online and probably pay $600 for one, and it could have nothing. It could work no time. Like these are at least, I mean, these things will last 10,000 hours easy, no problem. And there's not a lot of people that are going to put that amount of
So you spend $600 online. You've still got to pay some sort of shipping. You still got to worry, like, is that going to come back in bits of plastic?
And it could be junk. Like it could
you don't know.
It could be right at the edge where something's about to go bad in it. And it's never been serviced.
You're getting this guarantee that it's going to last another 10,000 hours.
I did have. So what I would have is I didn't even have anything really set up. I had one PVM set up with a Mister on it and a Super Nintendo on it sometimes, and then I'd have like a note where it'd say like, this is $800. Here's all the things that have been done to it by me, and then also more documentation available upon request. So somebody would come up to me and say, hey, can I see this? What else is available? I had a whole Google link that was just a document, and it would have a whole listing with the date it was serviced, the serial numbers, everything that
Nice.
was done to it.
Sure.
And then it would have photo albums linked in there of a 50-page or 50 photos of all the work. And then what it looks like in a test screen scenario.
Sure.
And I had that for each of them. And then also I had referred to the service manual on it. So you've got all the information there. When somebody buys it, it's not just a PVM. They're getting a PVM with the whole, as much documentation. No one's given that. No one's given that. That's as closest to like a manual or something you're going to get. So
I mean, imagine if you were buying used, let's say not just a used car, but a classic car. And do you buy? I think classic car really holds up because classic car is something that will retain value over time if it's the correct model, if it's the right thing. But also, a classic car is still something that you might want to use every day. It's not something that, I mean, it could be that someone just buys it and parks it in the garage. Absolutely. But it can also be something that, hey, I want to drive it on Sundays. I still want to, putter around town with it or have some fun. So do you, A, buy it from, I don't know, some guy? It was Craigslist. He's got the car. Maybe people know more about cars. Or do you go to the guy who's restored it? Look, I've got a long history of restoring these cars. I know all about them. Turns out he's got 20,000 YouTube subs for repairing cars. Of course, you're going to pay for that peace of mind rather than buying it off some rando from Facebook Marketplace. It's just that we know more about cars in general as a society, and the car market is probably more advanced and obviously larger than CRT. So it's more obvious. Of course, I'm going to buy the classic car from the guy who's got the great reputation for restoring them, not the rando from some other place. And it's really, to me, exactly the same with monitors, because I like the car analogy because we use the monitor. I'm not just buying it as an investment piece. I'm not just buying it because I think it'll go up in price. I'm buying it because I'm going to use it moderately. It'll probably retain its value if I don't use it too much. Like a classic car. If I just drive it on Sunday, do a few laps around the foreshore, enjoy, I'm not doing burnouts and go at 150 down the highway and stuff, but I'm enjoying this. It'll probably last me quite a long time, but I still want to use it. It's not like an item, I don't know, like a sealed video game. Well, obviously you can't use it because it's a sealed thing. This is an item that is designed to be used, and that's why I think it's so important to get it from a reputable restorer like yourself.
Well, and the two people who bought the PVMs, they both were friends. They were the same group of people, so I'll tell you how that went. But they were each of them had other CRTs. These weren't their first CRTs. They just were like, they didn't even had RGB modded CRTs. And they said, we've never seen a PVM in real life. And they were just blown away. They were like, we love the way this looks. Like, this is just unbelievable. And so I mean, I talked to them a good amount beforehand, before they both bought it. So there was a lot of, they came back numerous times looking at it. It was, here's the way these sales things would go. It was very entertaining. So sometimes Bob, like I said, or Jose would be like, hey, we found somebody who's interested in your PVM, Steve. Come here and talk to him. And I would be talking to somebody else about repair stuff, videos, somebody else who would come up. Nice people, wonderful, just always coming up all day. It was so awesome talking about questions, about fixing stuff. So I was doing that. I would go down here and talk about this PVM. Somebody would be like in love with it, have those big gushy eyes. But see, these guys that were in this bracket were amongst our age bracket, Lewis, or maybe a little bit even older, with between our age, maybe 5 years older than us.
Sure.
And so they would get, oh yeah, hang on, I'm going to get this. Hang on, give me 1 minute. And then they go sit there and do this number. And then they get this face. And they turn around and they'd walk the other direction. You'd never see him again. And I would turn around to Bob and I go, Jose, yeah, the wife just told him he better not come home with that if he wants to come home. It was so funny because that's the way it was half the day. after people would be like doing that. And then the people who bought it were the ones that it was a couple first. It was a guy and a girl, and she, I believe, was from Japan, maybe, because she sounded like she was like looking at the CRT, and she was really into it herself. And it was the 1343 I had set up. So she looks at it, she's like, this looks great. He's saying it looks great. And then there's another friend with him that he's like, yeah, this is cool. And they're talking a lot to me, asking about it, saying they know my work, they appreciate it, and they really like this thing. And so I'm like, yeah, it's great. Here's all this about it. And here's the price. And so they go walk away. And the guy's, I think he had a ring on her finger. So I think she was married to him, right? They both had rings, I believe, or engaged, maybe. But she came back alone. And she said, can you do a better deal on this? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she said a number, and I said, I can't do that much, but if you buy it right now, I'll sell it to you for $750, just what I told you. I think I had 800 marked on it or something, or 850 originally. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And so she went, and she got him, and they came back, and they bought it, like, pay me. And I was like, great, that's awesome, thank you. And and I was like, look, I know you're still at the show. Would you like to just... I've got the other one here. It's not hooked up. We're saving power for Greg's, 3D printers. We're saving watts. So I'm like, I could just hook the other one up, and I will put this one over there, and you come get it when you're done. And she's like, great. They're both like, that works perfectly. So I would be in the booth the rest of the day, right? This is probably lunchtime, and they kept coming back. And I'd be like, hey, how's it going? I was like, hey, good. And I'm like, are you ready to get your PVM and go? Oh, no, we're just walking around still. And this happened like 2 or 3 more times. And finally, it was getting towards the end of the day, and it was the buddy. He was like, hey, will you make me a deal on this other one? The second one I had put out, and I was like, sure. It's like, you buy it now, I'll do, $50 off too. And then... or however much, it was 800 at the end, because this one does component video, the other one doesn't. Had a little bit different feature set. So he said great, and he bought it, and he's like, I couldn't go home and have my friend be the one with the PVM, and then I'll always look at it, and I was like, this is the only one I've ever seen. I don't think I'll see a good one like this in this condition again. It's a fair deal. He's like, I don't think I couldn't, and I couldn't live with myself if I let him get one and I didn't have one. And then I was just like, yeah, that's great. So yeah, the same group bought both of them, and then the third one was just kind of hanging out there. No one bought it.
Okay.
But it was fine. I honestly brought the third one as kind of like a last second thing. I wasn't suspecting to sell more than 2 of them. So
I think it's a good analogy. Also, what you said, that if you were buying a PVM from you at that rate, at that style, after it's been serviced, it's similar to the classic car analogy. It's probably not your first car.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not buying a 78 Camaro or something as my daily driver to get around and spending a whole lot of money on it. No, I'm a person who knows about cars. I know what's up, and it's the same thing. I've got a couple of monitors, and as you say, I think there's that. I've got to the stage in life where I want that. I've built myself up. I've got some money. I'm financially stable, and that's what I want. And it's fine. There is many different people and you've just talked about the other end of the market. You already talked about the other end of the market. It's Shank and his crazy friggin' friends who run around with consumer monitors under their arm and go, look, I've set this up and it flickers green, but don't worry about it. There's no lag. It doesn't matter that it flickers green, right? That's the other end of the market. That's the kids, right? Right on. And of course, when you're a kid, you should be buying an old, Mazda 323 Beta to rang around the streets and you don't give a shit. Exactly. I'd go to, look, it's my Mazda. It doesn't have any electronic bullshit on it. It's tremendous. I love playing it old school, just like Melee is. But then you get a little older. You get a little money, and you're like, you know what? I've had a whole bunch of shitty cars in my time. I'm going to get something good. And I really think it's exactly the same, that this market is evolving a little bit. I understand that the market cap of CRTs, and it certainly is a drop in the ocean of the entire antiques and collectibles trade and the antiques and collectibles market. But to me, that even signals a little bit of evolution. There is an upper bound and a lower bound in this market now, and that's all really good. And it's good for you as a business person to go. Of course, you go for the people that have got money, not the kids who don't have money.
Well, and the people need to realize that there's different, of course, we always say the same thing, and anybody, Shank always gives me a hard time saying that, like, I'm a scalper, just joking with me, of course, but it's funny. I mean, I don't care. Personally, I know that, like, let's say, what if I didn't exist? It's not like we live in some vacuum. There would be somebody else here that would be doing the CRT stuff more than likely. And it would have been me. It would have been somebody else who's makes CRT stuff. And I don't know. I mean, would have they have been a greater person? I mean, my mission and drive has always been to study the machines and try to get the information out there. And thankfully, I've been able to, use that and turn that into a way to do this professionally for myself and be able to do a job that I want to do. And it entails that. But at the same time, because there's obviously a difference between what I'm doing and somebody who just runs a recycling business and finds 100 PVMs, doesn't even know how to turn them on, but wants the primo price of how much they will sell for occasionally, which is, a couple $100 less than what I'm buying it for. They shouldn't be doing that. It's just like the same thing with a car. If a car needs a new engine or a new transmission or needs all kinds of work, it's not going to be sold for the market price.
Right. When you're a kid, you take a chance on a crazy car. I've got a few $1,000. There's a guy in the next suburb, and I'm going to go buy it from him. That's what you do when you're a kid. But when you're 40 or 50, you're like, no, I want to cruise around in something nice. Jesus, I'm 50. Yeah. I've worked hard my whole life. I want to cruise around. And I really think it's the same thing. When you're 50, you don't go to some random crackhead off Facebook Marketplace and be like, oh, I'm going to get a shitty old Mercedes. And, hey, it's a Mercedes. Like, no, you go and you buy a nice one from a reputable dealer or like a decent reseller, or even someone who's like, look, this is a classic Mercedes. You don't want a new one, but I fixed it up. Yeah, it's a good sign that, first of all, the Melee kids are into it. And that this is a mature thing, that you can get a good product. Like, yes, I want to pay a little extra to be guaranteed that this is not dodgy at all.
I will tell you that a lot of things are good for the CRT sphere, community, market, whatever you want to call it. As the way that things are going right now, it still feels like it's kind of a growth thing a little bit. It's not where it's gotten so crazy that it's like jump the shark. Everybody wants it that's in the place, and everybody's talking about it, and everybody's trying to sell them like Pokemon cards or something. It's not like that right now, but it still is. There's a lot of people that came up to me and said, hey, I don't know. A lot of people might say that I just want you to know everything you're doing is great. Even if these things are going up in price, it honestly means that people are caring about them more, keeping them. And I'm like, yeah, they're keeping them out of the garbage. They went from being garbage. Then I see, and I'm not trying to knock people and their passions for things, but I did come across like somebody written something, and it was, again, everybody thinks they're coming out with something new when they come out with some list of like the CRTs that, here's a list of CRTs and tips to beat the scalpers, right? And it's like, you read their first goal and their goal on this manifesto. It's like the Jerry Maguire speech. If you're familiar with this movie.
Yeah, sure.
At the beginning of Jerry Maguire, he like writes this manifesto email talking about how, superficial and everybody acts and pretends to be, and why does everyone do that and all this stuff. And it ends up making him, people thinks he's nuts because they don't want to be faced with the truth, and he basically gets fired. Well, it's like they're writing these manifestos on how to, and filling it with pretty 80% good stuff on models and different CRTs, but at the same time, like they're like talking about, oh, well, our goal is to only have the major goal is to make sure that CRTs are always cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that shouldn't really be a goal. It doesn't. I mean, you can always there's always going to be a cheap CRT out there, but if you're if people are into something, it's not they're not going to be trash anymore. It's just like that. You're not going to find them as trash anymore. And
right.
It's like comic books, anything. There was a time when you could go find really high-end comic books. You never have to pay more than $300 for one, even like ones that are worth $50,000 today. Not that long ago. So I think the thing that's frustrated to me is just the idea that the only thing that's important is keeping them cheap.
So we want to keep them accessible, might be a better word. That we don't want to price things out of the market. Like, I don't think that it's kind of ever going to be that some shitty consumer set is suddenly $500 per set. I can't because there's obviously, and also a massive difference between the no-name generic brand that was released and then the PVMs at the other end of the market. I don't know. I think CRTs will stay accessible. Can you pick them up off the street? Okay, as you say, people are going to catch on to that. People are going to restore them a little bit. We don't see a classic 70s muscle car as cheap anymore. Well, it's probably rusted away, so there's service. There's a lot more consumables on that.
But you're exactly right. There's nothing like there's a big thing where, like the old cars, they just don't make them anymore. So the best of those are highly sought after by people with money. And there's nothing you could do about that, unfortunately. I mean, the point is you just have to sit there and realize that, hey, if you're not involved in that marketplace, you don't have to go to those extremes, right, to be in it. You can get the same experiences almost with a similar setup that is a consumer TV and a PC CRT.
Yep.
Or eventually it's all going to be just looking at scalers anyway one day. And so at that point, we're just preserving the hardware so the scalers have something to refer themselves to. Right?
I think the
scalers need to always know what the CRT originally looked like so that we know they're actually looking like a CRT.
Sure. I don't think CRTs are going to be so scarce that Mike Chi has to call someone up to be like, yo, what does it look like on the CRT? I think there'll be enough around for that. But this, again, the classic car thing, because there's some... I'm trying to break down again this older person in our generation who's worked for a number of years, maybe had a successful job or business, has that retirement money or is getting there or something. Some of them will have been car people their whole life. Some people would have been like, I had that, when I was a kid. I was working on the Camaro, and then that, and they progressively get better. And there'll be some people who, I don't know, hit 40, 50, cash out, golden parachute, get a little money, sold the house, made money on it. And they're like, yo, I've always just driven a minivan because the kids, for the last 20 years until the kids here, time for something, I remember the good days. So I'm going to buy the 70s muscle car instead. So there's going to be those people that have had it and those people that just buy into it when they've got cash. And I kind of think it's a similar thing here. There's going to be some people that just jump straight in because I'm like, I don't know, I loved it, or I love the muscle car, I love the monitor. I think
an interesting part of all that too is how is the next generation getting involved in this? Like these Smash guys. What if you're a guy that's in his, these guys late teens, early 20s, and you're into this Smash Melee tournament, and you go to these things, and that's where you see CRTs growing up. And you do that for the next 10 years. You just see these CRTs, and every once in a while you see a PVM, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what's it going to be like? That's what it's going to be like 10, 20 years from now, right? Yeah. It's going to be even more extreme like that, where you are going to be having, a demand again by like, what's that next generation? Like, when are they going to get the money? We're like, and they're going to be looking back at this era as the era that made them think about PVMs, because like when we grew up, no one was playing games on PVMs on like the television. But now all these guys are doing is they're playing Smash tournaments on CRTs, and then they're getting on YouTube, and they're watching us and other people play games on PVMs. So their whole upbringing is thinking about the CRTs and the PVMs in a different light. And then like they will get to where their disposable income is available. And then they're going to be fighting over the PVMs and BVMs that are available 20 years from now. And then it's going to be the price of cars will be literally the same price as it
maybe. I wonder if the maybe
you
might say it the X factor or the factor that will affect things is, and you mentioned it earlier, VGA monitors. And we know very well right now that if you just attach a simple little bit of scanline effect, nothing really major, will make a VGA CRT look right almost exactly like your professional monitor. That you just get a little scaler on the end, nothing big, not even RetroTink 5X sort of stuff, to either just line double it up to 480p, line double it up and put some adaptive, some, whatever the latest artificial scanline technology is by then, which I think is not going to be a massive device, not to be an expensive device. And you are already here in 2022 getting an effect which is on par, maybe hard to tell apart from a professional level monitor. And that might be some of the X factor, because I think that there are still plenty of, because that will happen even with a cheap VGA monitor. Even with your no-name, your one that came with your cheap computer around the year 2000, you'll be able to get such effects. So I do wonder if the X factor, if the hidden thing that could change things is, and maybe the analogy, again, I'm going back to muscle cars, is it that now a lot of the dudes are putting like full electric mods. Like you'll have some sweet 70s car and it's full electric, and it turns out it's faster and better off the line than the original gas-guzzling V8, right? Because it's electric.
So think about it as if you're looking at motorcycles.
Okay.
And you have the guy who's into like the street riding, like the crotch rocket fast motorcycles.
Sure.
And then you've got the other segment that's different, that's still into motorcycles, that's into the cruiser,
True.
Harley Davidson, chopper, different styles.
Yeah,
there you go. You've got two different segments right there where it's like different things. But the VGA monitors are out there, much easier to get. Good ones, not as easy to really.
That's true. I mean, your high end,
you can find a lot of them, but a lot of them
type
aren't the
tubes
great
are hard
ones.
to get.
Yeah,
but
I still think I
still kind of think if you even your entry level one, like how to say, if I had the choice and I was like, look, I'm one of these people that you met that have never seen a PVM. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Do I get a consumer set or could I get a lower end VGA monitor? I think both of those could give you quite an acceptable result in that.
Most
However,
people should just see what is around and get something that's small, make sure it works. So it could be something where I think the easiest thing to do is to just some people, if they have some kind of console that outputs composite, right? If they don't, maybe just go for VGA right away, because VGA is more easily convertible to something else. If you don't stay in the whole CRT thing, you don't really have to do much more.
Sure.
To go
Particularly if you're any monitor, PS3, Xbox 360. I don't know if the Wii does native 480p. No, I think you need the mod. No, it does. It does do 480p. Right.
Yeah,
so it's possible to sort of push 480p out of that. So if you're in that generation, dang, just go straight for a VGA CRT.
But if you want to go in the older school direction, you should definitely just. I think the good thing too about going with a smaller CRT is if you get it and you decide you like that size, you know what the size of PVM that size is, right? You know the size. You just know the quality is going to be insanely better. Or you might look at that size and say, hey, for me, I want to have bigger. And you start looking at bigger ones. But you've got something for right now, so you understand a CRT. And then it's easier to get rid of that 13-inch if you do get something bigger and you want to move on. Or park that thing in the garage somewhere as like your emergency CRT. A lot of people will just do that, like keep a small one for some reason. So And it's not, again, it's really simple to get rid of small CRTs. Even if it's you don't want it around, you can put it on Facebook and somebody will come get it if it's small.
Because you can move it. Because you can carry it.
Come pick it up and put it in their office, in their corner of their room. 13-inch could fit anywhere. Just about.
I'm so... and having said all of this, and I do... I don't want to be the BVM elitist, but holy shit, it's really good to have my 20-inch BVM back. Like, wow. I'm back looking at that beautiful screen again. But the reason I bring that up...
What is that one? What is the...
That is the 20E1E, I think.
Oh, the E? Well, I think
it's the
that's
1,000...
even higher.
Yeah, I think it's the 1,000 line count.
That's the
not
best
multi-format.
one.
It's a single... Not, I don't know what you say, single format, not multi-format, so only 480i, but it looks amazing. And also, because my point about this was it's a big square that has handles on the side of it. I couldn't pick this up like a consumer set, but I can just, I mean, I'm on, by the way, the reason that I live in this new apartment, 5th floor, no elevator. That's why I got a deal. That's why I got a fucking deal on this place, right? I don't care. I'm a cyclist. I can jump upstairs. No problems, right?
I bet that was fun bringing that BVM up the stairs.
Yeah, so I did that myself. I didn't leave that to the removal guys. But
oh my gosh,
55 kilograms of BVM. But it's got two handles on the side that I can hold them, right? It's not like your consumer monitor, you like that guy, the strong man holding the big rock meme, right? You're like, this. So, yeah, they are. So you're right. The small look. If you get a smaller quality BVM, PVM, whatever, you're going to be able to move it later on, which is an interesting part. I think it's a very interesting thing about the market for CRTs that there is. Your CRT will probably retain a lot of its value. I'm not trying to say it's a good investment. This is not investment advice. But if you don't use it like, you use it regularly, but not, 24 hours a day. But I where am I going with this point? No, my point is
like
that
the two, I think you're saying like the two, so the two most acceptable sizes and the ones that will always be most desirable are going to be the ones that are around 14 inches and 20 inches.
Okay, sure. Easy to move. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Larger,
and then over 20 inches, it starts to become difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what maybe you're going towards.
Does the D24 have handles on it?
Yeah, same thing. Same as the D20.
Handles,
or same as the 20-inch you have. It's got the handles on there. And even the 32-inch has handles on the side of it. But they're like double handles, so you use like...
Yeah, okay.
You pick it up one person on each side.
Dang.
So that one's a behemoth.
I think I was going... My point about the cost was that... how to say it? When I look around the CRT market, and people can correct me if they see something different, I don't see a lot of people buying these monitors purely as investment products. I see them buying them because they want to use them. Now, I'm not saying like in the long term. Now, there are people that buy them in the short term to flip them. Yes. Okay. This is a truth that people buy them and then I want to flip them straight away. But I don't see people buying them and storing them for the long term as an investment article. If you're buying one of these monitors for the long term, it's because you probably want to use it, right? And it might also help to convince your spouse that I'm spending all this money on a monitor and it probably won't lose necessarily all its value. There's at least, straight up I could get 50% again. That's not bad. But these monitors are at least holding the value. But we still want to use them.
Yeah, they have to be usable, right? Because if they don't work, they're not really worth anything. And nobody's
That's a great
running
point.
around. If they don't work, people aren't just buying one to have it on their shelf usually.
Yeah.
And if they are, they're going to pay anything for it. They're smart. They just go get one that's broken prices. Really, it's not that. People are not doing that. They want it to work. They want to use it for something.
They want to use it.
Show it off. Say
Which
they
I
got
think
it.
It does create its own extra place in the overall antiques and collectibles trade, because there's I don't know, maybe the majority of items in the antiques and collectibles trade that are not designed to be used. that are meant to be, I'm collecting this. I'm going to keep it on my shelf. I want to look at it. I like having it, or I think it's an investment property that I'm going to then be able to, it might appreciate in value. But that's why I kept going back to classic cars that get driven, not Jay Leno style that sit in some warehouse forever, right? That I want to drive on a Sunday. I still want to drive it on a Sunday, and I still want to use it. So I've still got to keep it. I don't know what you say in America. I still got to keep it regoed. I've still got to keep it like current.
You got to keep it registered. You got to keep it insured. You
insured.
Keep
blah blah blah.
Inspected and all this stuff. It's the same. Like you say, it's the same thing. If the CRT doesn't work, it's not really a desirable thing usually.
Right. I've never heard of that before.
And you want to see it. And even if you compared that to the things being used on it, video games. Well, a lot of people are moving completely away from using their regular consoles on these. They're moving to Misters. Mm-hmm. So many people are like, oh, that's the exact setup I need to get right there. The Mister and a PVM set up just like that. And then other people would get one of the heavy hitters on the Super Nintendo or Genesis Mega Drive list for game cartridges. And they're not going to sit there and play that cartridge, right? Even if they own it. They're probably going to put that on a shelf and then go get the ROM card. But the CRT's got to always be ready to go, and it's got to be perfectly calibrated. And even when it's perfectly calibrated, we can handle no little imperfections in an analog signal. Why in the world does the right side look 1/16 of an inch larger than the left side of the screen? I don't understand this.
And you're only going to see it in the 240p test suite. Never notice it.
And I can't see the whole fact that I've only put this pixelated square in there, so my whole picture's aspect ratio is way off. But I don't care about that. I'm just worried about this wonk I've got on this far extreme scan line that nobody in their right mind should be staring at.
You can't see
no, that's
that
just
previous.
A joke,
remember, I showed you that.
Exactly
I showed you that my 14-inch consumer Trinitron, and I showed you how it's not straight lines; they kind of curve. And you told me the yoke, and that was a real pain to try to move. And yes, I can absolutely see that in the 240p test suite, but regular games, no. I can watch a movie and I don't see it.
Yeah,
but you know, like, is it academically correct or is it just good for us to use? So. Oh, this focus on my camera is not working today. So, yeah, we will absolutely, like, what's the reality of geometry issues versus the academia of the 240p test suite?
And the whole process of how the analog pictures even being made. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like a lot of people should go back and watch Artemio's presentation because he does a great job of explaining how this test software has proven that some of that, like, signals put out by a lot of consoles is just bad. Like, no matter what you do, it was always bad. It might be missing information. And so you can't even get a good test of this because it's already testing to show problems. But it was something, again, we are fine-tooth picking and like nitpicking at stuff that back when it was made, there was nobody doing this stuff, or it would have never made it off the production floor, right? They were like, send it, man, send it, let it go.
Because if you watch TV on it, if you watch a movie or whatever, like, you don't notice it. You don't notice.
But you don't think about it either.
You don't think about
it. Looking for the perfection.
The only reason that I noticed on this consumer set that I'm talking about, and it's like wonky lines, and the line sort of curves down on one side. The only reason I would notice that line is because widescreen gets letterboxed, and so there is a thick line that, you know, gets curved downwards. But if it's a proper 4:3 show that I'm watching, you would never, ever notice massive geometry problems with this monitor. You watch...
or a CRT at all. It's so funny.
Yeah,
when I was
exactly.
Growing up,
right.
When I was growing up, I do remember, like, at the end of the night, people would blare that the signal pattern sometimes.
Oh, the signal pattern. Do you remember that?
But that
like, TV would stop at a certain hour.
That would literally... happen, and that's the only time. I didn't know that was so old, though. It was never more modern CRTs that were seeing that. That was like 80s, right? So that's 80s when I would be first watching TV, would show up sometimes late. So that would happen, but after that, I never looked at a CRT with a test pattern on it until I got into what I'm doing. So, you know, your eyes were never even trained to notice things that were being off on the TV. It had to be extremely off to the point where it's like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm watching this TV and it's giving me a headache, right? And you're like, oh, wow, the convergence is so bad that like I'm giving this person a headache because they're staring at this movie and they don't realize it's out of focus to the point where it's driving them crazy. So there's like that but edge geometry, forget about it, man. You never fired up a VHS tape. You never fire up VHS tape and it'd show you like a test pattern for 10 seconds. They never had anything like that.
Yeah. You'll never, if you're watching a VHS tape, you'd never notice edge geometry right there.
Not really. It's more about a bunch of other
and I theorize and I postulate that most people playing retro video games, if you had edge geometry, you're not noticing even really strong edge geometry. Just enjoy it. Whoa.
Yep. All right. Well, let's cut it off man. There. Hopefully, we survived and we can piece together a great episode.
I'll piece it together. All this. This is good. I think it was a nice talk in the end about CRTs and I don't know what level we're at and where we are. And I think we need more of these as this market evolves. And it is a market. It's very, very small relatively, but it's evolving. And I think we need more of these analogies and more of this analysis of the market because it's not detailed enough anymore to just say CRT. There is distinctions. There are classes of people who are buying these things that we need, and I think we need to have a more detailed discussion about that. So this is good. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, man.
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Don't forget to watch and follow Steve's channel, Retro Tech, of course. Follow here, like and subscribe, and all of that for Zez Retro. I know I've been away for a million years. We're getting back into it. We're going to have another podcast once a week. We want to do a recap of the conference, first of all, and then hopefully next week we're going to secure some guests since Steve has told us how many good friends that he made at Retro World. So we're going to try and grab some of these people online very soon.
Yes. We'll see if they're actually... We'll see if they're actually going to show up, right? This is the important part. Are they really my friend or they just say that so I would leave them alone? You'll have to wait and see.
As soon as they get a deal on a PVM, they're fucking out the door. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Ciao. Bye-bye.